Hi, I'm Bob Linde from the Tradition School of Herbal Studies, coming to you from the new herbal lab at Magical Butter. So, wanted to talk a little bit about an anti-anxiety formula that we can create for our dogs. And anytime we're using herbs with pets of any type, we need to take a little bit of extra caution. They're not quite the same as people, so we have to adjust dosage, and there's certain herbs that we have to stay away from with dogs and cats. So make sure you check with your veterinarian or do your homework, do your research on that. But dogs usually are pretty safe, and we really do only think about dosage primarily, except for a few occasions. No chocolate for your puppies and no garlic. But two herbs that I use oftentimes with dogs is stinging nettle, and yeah, it'll sting you if you get it fresh, and oat straw. And I use this particular combination when we're talking about just general anxiety, because we have to figure out, why is your dog getting anxious? And it could be something as simple as separation anxiety, but more often when we see this generalized anxiety, there's inflammation going on with the dog. And they're not able to express it in the way that a person can say, I don't feel comfortable, or I'm hurt, or something like that. With dogs, they oftentimes start to lick, they start eating grass, and that inflammation frequently comes from their food or something they've gotten into, or they're having an adverse reaction to something like flea bites or something they've been exposed to out in the house or in their yard. So a lot of the herbs that we think about specifically for dogs is anti-inflammatory. So the two herbs that I find exceptionally helpful is the stinging nettles and oat straw. The oat straw is very nourishing and helps to soothe any kind of skin irritation. It also soothes the gut and has a general nourishing, calming effect on humans and dogs. The stinging nettle is one of my favorites and my go-to for any kind of histamine response. That's when we're having an allergic reaction to either the food that they're getting or something they've been exposed to. I find it so fast and so effective that oftentimes within 1 or 2 days of adding this into their food, they're already doing significantly better. So all we really need to do is make an infusion with this, and so we're just going to do water, and we can make it strong, adjusting for the dosage. Smaller dog needs very small amounts, and if we look at about a tablespoon of the product for a normal human, that we can just go ahead and start dividing in half each time. So we might use about a teaspoon for a 60-pound dog, and we can go ahead and dose down to where we just put a little sprinkle. But ultimately, stinging nettles and oat straw, I consider food. It's something we could eat ourselves in soup, just like spinach. So for your dogs, don't be too frightened. If you give a little bit too much, it's okay. For my dog, he'll eat anything, so I can literally throw these dried onto his food and he gobbles it up every time. But the reality is, some dogs are a little bit pickier about their food. So going ahead and making an infusion, around a 7-to-1, 7 parts of water to 1 part herb, and that we can go ahead and either add to the water bowl, we can add a dropper and give it directly to the dog if they're able to take medicine that way, or you can even, if they're getting dry food or wet food, we can add that into their food so they're getting it with every time that they eat their food. So let's go ahead and make this formula up, and we're going to go ahead and make up a nice little tea with this in our Magical Butter machine. And we've got probably about 15 to 20 grams of the oat straw, I think a good fistful, a little bit more of the stinging nettles. Stinging nettles is probably one of my favorites because it's so mineral rich, it nourishes the blood, and sometimes anemia, dogs get that as well, can cause some anxiety and heart palpitations. So we'll add a little bit more. I like about 30 grams or more of the stinging nettles. Make sure that you do get it dried, because if you just pick it out of the yard, it will sting you and your puppy. And we're going to go ahead and add some water. Make sure we get it up to the minimum fill line there. And I don't add anything to make it pretty. The dogs usually are okay with not quite as an exciting taste or flavor. And get our lid on, plug in our machine here. And with this one, we don't have any volatile oils, so we can go ahead and get a little bit stronger mixture and get it all the way up to 160. But if you add some other herbs in that have volatile oils, mint, anything along those lines, you don't want to go quite that high. So I'm putting this up to 160. And 2 hours is plenty of time. We don't need to cook it any longer than that. So we blended one up earlier. So we're gonna do a little bit of TV magic and switch these out for you. And we can see this yummy stuff that we've made for our puppy. And you know, once we strain this out, we can go ahead and put it in a sealed container like this and store it in our fridge. You don't want to have too much of it because it will spoil after about 3 or 4 days in the fridge. Just make sure you're not getting anything too chunky in there. Let's strain this out. Oh, look at that, that's beautiful. And give it a good squeeze here. Get all that goodness out. So we can go ahead and look at about a 60-pound dog. That's a nice average size. We could start with a tablespoon of this liquid, just add it into their food. And if you're gonna put it into their water dish so they're gonna drink it throughout the day, we might go ahead and put 2 or 3 tablespoons in there. Ultimately, with these 2 herbs, you're really safe. And you know, woof, I feel great with this. So we're gonna go ahead and send it back to the kitchen. This is Bob Linde from the Tradition School of Herbal Studies talking to you about herbs for anxiety for your dog.